Just when it's like, yeah, this next week you'll know we got it. Okay, can we talk a little bit about, you've been talking about format and just the way you would put something like this together being different, right? How is the audience a part of why this is different?
They don't have time to just sit there and read paragraphs. If you can get the data in a small, concise visual format, it'll be better.
Correct.
So thinking more how it's going to work, not how much you're dreaming about it.
Right. The audience is going to be pragmatic. They're probably, on a federal grant, by law, they have to send your grant to a certain number of readers. So there will be at least 3 readers who will read this and rate according to a common scale, kind of like a rubric in a class, and they'll give you points, and they'll give comments on each section, and then we will get those back whether or not we get the grant. And that helps for the next go, just like your comments from an instructor would tell you what to do differently on paper too.
So
Which I should mention here that Dr. Hackler is one of the few people to attain full points on her trio grants.
Yes, the
Right.
first 2 we got 100 points, and that bought us an extra year. So the 100th point was worth $200,000, which means that's worth 2 or 3 days going back through the thing to make sure everything's consistent. For $200,000, how much? Think how much you make per hour.
Yeah.
That's the thing that always astonishes me on this. That
Too bad it doesn't translate to your paycheck.
no. Yeah.
Yeah, which is more important, the quality of the content or the formatting of the content to them?
I don't. That is the question with the audience,
Okay.
and you never know.
All right.
The way I approach that is the safety thing. You can't screw up on format, because if they get lost, they will take off points even if you have good material in there. So that's a keep your nose clean thing.
Okay.
Keep your nose clean on that and make sure they can't get lost. And then the thing that really distinguishes your grant from a grant from another school, because you are competing against other schools who are also turning in grants. These 3 readers are reading 5 or 6 grants from different schools at the same time. That's where the quality of your ideas and the complexity of your novelistic vision, if you want to call that,
Okay.
and the quality of your research. Did you do good quality research? Do you have a lot of support that you can provide? Can you make a compelling case? That's where that comes into play. Because really, to write grants, you have to be able to research, you have to be very logical, you have to make good arguments to substantiate things. You have to be able to describe things very well.
To a broad audience, so you're not necessarily like it's easy to write for a prof because you know them and you know what they like.
Right.
But
Now, for a local foundation like the Kirkpatrick Foundation, we know those people. We don't know everyone on the board who will be reading it, but we know some things they like. And on a federal grant, you know things they will be looking for, but you could get really screwy readers on a federal grant. You could get someone who's never worked in higher education. And so you have to be real careful about your vocabulary and not assume things on the part of the reader. But you don't want to insult them either.
Understand.
So it's kind of tricky to be able to tell them that. Other questions? Laura?
I see a lot of like tables and simple graphs kind of things like that, but if your project, like if you're trying to get the grant to build something, would it be appropriate to include a blueprint?
I have never done a construction grant, but I understand that that's required, and you can just imagine how much time it would take. And there's quite a bit of cost. You have to get an architect to draw it up. So you have to pull something like this off. You have to have someone who's a good project manager who can coordinate all those elements and timeline things out, which is somewhat like the project you all are doing. You've got to get the information in time and work it.
Do you have like a budget that you work with to write the grant, to like do the research and get an architect to draw
Yes.
stuff, or
You would have to have
those
money, some money up front on a grant like that. And like federal grants, the agencies that provide money like NASA, they have conferences every year about how to write grants. Brent Eskridge went to a conference like that recently and is trying to obtain some more NASA grants. So there's some money up front people think grants are free money, but it's not really free. It's strategic money, but it's a lot of hours. I couldn't even estimate the number of human hours that went into this project. I wouldn't want to. It made me feel guilt about my husband and my dogs. My dogs wonder why I sit in front of the computer like this all the time.
Daniel.
What then was like your major in college, like and stuff like and like
English.
grad work and stuff like that?
That's why I got into this, because I knew I could write, and I knew how to research, and I knew how to put a good argument together, and I saw other schools who would be able to do it.
Did you do like graduate work and stuff for this or for
No, my graduate work is in the 17th century British literature, 16th century British literature. I had no training for this. Yeah, but you go to conferences. I mean, there is a professional community. It's not an academic discipline, but it's a professional community.
So you basically learn on the job.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
being able to communicate well is a bedrock skill for being able to do this.
Chanel has a question.
How did you actually get this job?
I didn't know people had like word grant
I
writer.
volunteered back in the early 90s, or late 90s, and we had a academic dean at the time, Dr. Dunnington, who's now in the School for Theology and Ministry, who said, well, let's give it a try.
So did you like present them the idea of, hey, our school needs a grant writer, or did they say?
No, I said, these other places are getting grants, and I think I have a lot of the skills it takes to get them. Let's just try and
Were you
see what
working
happens.
here as an English
Yeah.
professor then?
I just, instead of a class, did this for one semester. Not this.
Yeah.
You don't start with something like this. Although we did, and it was insane.
And I was her assistant at the time, her student assistant,
yes,
for that first
we did this
SSS grant.
research.
Yeah, and we were just starting out. I think that you sent it off the summer that I left. Anyway, so I remember the research gathering phase of this,
yeah.
the madness involved.
It was nuts.
Yeah.
It was nuts. But you get better as you go. Anyway, the audience issues are quite interesting because you never know who's going to read it. You have a general idea of what they want. But just like students want to see sample papers, you don't start something like this until you call around and talk to some friends at other schools and say, can we get a copy of your grant? We understand you got funded. And you look at how they did the budget, and you look at how much space they spent on certain things. You know what I'm talking about? You want to see a prototype that was a successful prototype.
Are other schools and places very cooperative in showing you their grants, or is it enough of a competition that they don't do that very easily?
They give you a rough draft.
Yes. We belong to a national network of Christian schools called the Council for Colleges and Christian Universities, CCCU. And there are many of us who know each other quite well and are willing to provide entrees. And then part of what you have to think of is what's your competitive base. This is a national grant, so somebody who's not even going to be, someone applying from the Northwest United States, or who got a grant 2 years ago and they're not in your cycle, they don't care.
If they already have the grant, like.
Right, they already have the grant. So we called Abilene Christian on the SSS grants. I'm trying to remember who we looked at here. Lee University, which is in Tennessee, which is a CCCU school, they shared their grant with us. But they said don't share it with anybody else.